This is just a quick update to my 30th anniversary edition video. I'll put a link in the top right corner here. If you haven't watched that, you might want to check it out. To those of you that did watch it, huge thanks for all the views and comments. I appreciate that. If you're a new subscriber, have a look at my older videos and my playlist. You might find something there that interests you. I received a few questions, and I thought that the answers were interesting enough to warrant a video. So we'll get to that in just a second. But first I wanted to say that I've refined this spreadsheet just a little bit, and I wanted to go over what I changed. The first thing is that after arriving at a token value I was content with for this estimate, I recalculated this formula here so that it would reference this print run value instead of the set value down at the bottom. That doesn't change the dollars assigned to tokens, it just keeps the formulas from going in an infinite loop on the spreadsheet. The next thing I did was swap two things in my order of operations. Previously, I calculated the split between retro value and modern value before calculating the basic land value. I've turned that around now and put the basic land value first, and the retro slot versus modern cards after that. And this allows me to easily adjust the balance of values between retro and modern. So if you see this number right here, 50,795, on both of these, that's a 50-50 split between retro and modern cards. Now I can simply adjust this cell right here to slide more or less of the value into the retro column or modern column without affecting the basic land values. And that'll be really handy for one of the questions that I was asked. While making that change, I reworked the basic land value, and now there's less money assigned to basic lands. I do think this is more correct. And the third change I made was that the price for Beta Time Vault had the decimal in the wrong place. Moving that decimal one place to the right added about $2,000 of cost to the beta set, in particular the beta rares. And doing that slightly adjusted these rarity splits right here. They didn't change much, but they did change a little. Just to reiterate something from the previous video, if you're wondering why the rares, uncommons, and commons for retro have this percent, and they have a different percent for modern, it's because the supply of retro cards is different than the supply of modern cards. Just a quick example here, for every one retro rare, there are 2 retro commons, and if you compare that to modern, you have roughly 3 modern rares and roughly 39 modern commons. Big difference. This modern section here does add up to 100%, and the retro section also adds up to 100%. I'm going to scroll through the formulas real quick. If anyone wants to see how to make this, you can see the formulas right here. This is the price per pack. Right now, it's set to 4 packs in a box for $999, but I could change this field to any pack cost I want, and we're going to do that here in a minute. The retro basic lands and the modern basic lands in the next row down each have 50% of the total basic land value. I can adjust that percent right here if I want. I don't really feel any need to do that. It's not a significant difference. So this is 50% of the money remaining after the tokens and the lands have been subtracted. This is what's left after that. This is how the retros get broken up. And here's how the modern gets broken up. Here in column E is the quantity of each different rarity in 413.5 packs. You can see here that it's 413.5 packs times the number of these cards that appear in a pack divided by the number of different possible cards of this type. In this case, it's 1 token per pack, and there's 16 different tokens. So right now as it sits, we have the MSRP pack cost, which gives us this amount of money that has to be divided up over all the cards that come in 413.5 packs. and we know exactly how many copies of each card we're going to get. After assigning the token value and the basic land value, it's currently adjusted so that the retro and modern are at 50-50. From there, it's going to be divided by the number of copies of each card you get, which results in the modern frame cards being cheaper due to having a higher supply. This should be very similar to the last one I showed in my other video, but I'm going to run through it here real quick. Here we are, tokens, basic lands, beta prices, collector's edition prices, 30th edition retro prices, and 30th edition modern prices. Feel free to pause the video if you want a better look at any of the prices. There's the tokens, all at 58 cents. Here's the basic lands, commons, uncommons, rares, Ancestral Recall, Badlands, Bayou, Black Lotus at $2,093 for modern and $8,574 for retro. Here's the Moxes, Plateau, Savannah, Scrubland, Taiga, Time Twister, Time Walk, Tropical Island, Tundra, Underground Sea, $102 for modern, $420 for retro, Volcanic Island, and here's the values for everything added together, $10,660 for a modern set, $44,127 for a retro set, or $54,787 for one of everything. Okay, one of the things a lot of people are having an issue with here for these prices is that they can't imagine that this newer printing could possibly be worth more than collector's edition for the retro cards. Even though, based on the print run numbers we looked at, the retro cards might be 9 times more rare than the collector's edition cards, or 14 times more rare if you want to add collector's edition together with international edition. So the first thing I want to look at here is what happens if I slide some of this retro value over into the modern column. I want to slide just enough over there so that, say, the duels and the Power 9 for the retro cards aren't more expensive than collector's edition. Basically, for this next example, we'll be treating collector's edition as if it were like a price ceiling for this new product. Okay, here we are back up at the top. In order to have the retro frame cards be equal to or less than the value of the CE cards, like if you think that's the ceiling, if that's the limit, then what that requires is to change this retro slot value here to be 21.69% of the value. And that puts 78% of the set value kind of on the modern cards here. We'll scroll down and take a look at what those prices look like. Tokens, basic lands, commons, uncommons, and rares. That puts a modern Lotus at $3,278 and a retro Lotus at $3,719, compared to collector's edition at, we'll say, $4,000. Here's the Moxes. The one that was really close here was Mox Jet. It shows us practically the same here between retro and collector's edition, with pretty much all the other power and duels being priced lower than the collector's edition cost. The exception there is Time Walk, which still shows a higher cost than collector's edition, but we'll just call that an anomaly. However, you'll notice that several of the less desirable cards still show a higher cost for retro than they have in CE. That's a side effect of the beta costs being high for collector value, while with collector's edition, awkwardly, the prices are more driven by players of the old school format. They chase after format staples like Power 9 and Duels, leaving the lesser cards without much value. And there you have it at the bottom, $16,688 for a modern set, and $19,157 for a retro set. So what this shows us is that you have to push a significant portion of the retro value over into the modern column in order to get the retro values down to be equal to or less than collector's edition. So if you think collector's edition should be a price ceiling for the retro frame cards, you're also kind of saying that people aren't really going to care about the difference between modern frame and retro frame, because pushing all that retro value into the modern column makes prices more equal between the two. Maybe that's correct to a certain degree. Maybe there are a lot of people who aren't going to care whether they have a modern Mox or a retro Mox. But I do think that having 3.36 times as many modern copies of the card than there are retro copies will show up as a price difference. And so I don't think it's reasonable to push this significant portion of the value from the retro column over into the modern column. Maybe some of it will push over there, but going from 50% down to 21% is just too much. And if we're not going to push this much retro value over into the modern column, then it looks like some of the retro rares are going to be priced higher than collector's edition cards. Okay, let's put that back to 50%. Now we'll go a little quicker here. A lot of people are saying they think the pack cost is too high, and then they pick some arbitrary number that they think might be a good price to sell packs for, an amount that they would be comfortable buying them for. $5, $10, $25, $40. Let's just take a look at that for a minute. If the pack costs were $40, this is what it would do to the card values in this set. If that's the amount of money that people have invested in these cards, then here's what the cards are worth. I'm not going to show all the cards here, just going to focus on some big hitters. Here's Black Lotus, $335 in modern and $1,373 in retro. Still over $1,000, not a cheap card, but nowhere near the value of this collector's edition one, or any other Lotus available on the market for that matter. Scrolling down to Underground Sea, we have modern at $16 and retro at $67. Those numbers might be appealing to people who don't yet own duels, but can you imagine what this would do to the prices of not only collector's edition, which as we've said has a lot of player-driven value for the old school format, but also for the revised duels? If unsanctioned players can pick up modern Underground Seas for $16 and then sell the revised copy to recapture some of that value, it's a pretty safe bet that the revised prices would crash from the flood of cards hitting the market. Similarly, the Power 9 prices here would crash the prices of Collector's Edition, Power 9, and Unlimited Power 9, because a larger portion of the value of the Power 9 in those two sets is player value, compared to Alpha and Beta, which have more stable collector value. Someone who has Alpha and Beta already isn't going to sell it for a cheaper version. They could have done that with Unlimited and Collector's Edition, and they didn't. But the players who are working with the cheapest copy that was available, if a cheaper copy shows up, they're way more prone to switch. Hopefully you can see here that $40 per pack or smaller numbers just isn't a reasonable price for this product because of how much damage it would do to the secondary market. Wizards of the Coast doesn't want to destroy the secondary market value. They'd much rather profit off this reprint equity. And if the going rate for the cheapest Black Lotus is $4,000, you can bet they're going to choose an MSRP that's high enough to let them capture a good chunk of that value on the new cards. Basically, they're not going to sell Lotuses for $300 if they can sell them for $3,000. Okay, moving down to this next section here. This is kind of a fun one. What would the card prices look like if instead of being in booster packs, you got the entire set for $999? This one was a lot easier to calculate because I didn't have to worry as much about relative rarity. You just get one copy of each card. So for the purposes of this example, you don't get the duplicate lands like they had in Collector's Edition, and you don't get double dual lands like they have in the booster packs for 30th Edition. Just one copy of each card. You still get both Soul Rings because they have slightly different art, and you get both retro and modern, so it's basically two full sets, one retro set and one modern set. Again, I'm not going to take the time to go over all the prices here, just going to look at a couple of the heavy hitters to get an idea what it would look like. Column D here is the number of copies of each of these basic lands that came in a Collector's Edition set, if anybody needs to know that. Okay, so if every box set has one retro set and one modern set, then both versions basically have equal value. Anyone who buys this will get both versions. One of them isn't more rare than the other. There's no longer 3.36 modern copies for every retro copy in this example. That's what happens when we take away randomization. So you can see here that if you purchased a box set for $999, you would get two Lotuses worth $93.98 each. Scrolling down to Underground C. Underground C is worth $15. Total on this column is different because it has tokens at the top. Let's go back to the top. Okay, what if the price was the original price of the Collector's Edition set? $49.95. Of course, that's pretty ridiculous because you're getting both a retro frame set and a modern frame set. Man, look at that. A lot of the cards have no value at all. There we go, Black Lotus for $4.70. And Underground C for 76 cents. Now, if you wanted to pretend that the box set only came with one full set of cards instead of having both retro and modern, then you could double these values. In other words, about $1.50 for an Underground C. Okay, that's about it here. I just wanted to reiterate one more thing about these prices. They're based only on the amount of money invested into the product, which is the MSRP cost, and the supply of cards that are required for that cost. This doesn't factor in demand at all. If demand is higher than supply, prices could go up from here. If demand turns out to be really low, it means that less supply would enter the market, and singles could be difficult to sell. Low liquidity. If Wizards has an abundance of unsold inventory for this product, maybe we could even see them offer it at a lower price, like an Amazon dump. Personally, I'd rather not see that happen. Not only would it hurt the value of the 30th Anniversary Edition cards, but it would have repercussions on the secondary market for things like Collector's Edition, revised duels, unlimited power. The demand is something I can't really quantify here with math. Prices are constantly in flux from various market forces, so these price estimates might not be good for very long. They're just supposed to be a ballpark value to give you a rough idea of what they should cost compared to each other and compared to other things. I don't imagine that future reprint sets like this will be released at a significantly lower price, if they're released at all. But if that did happen, it could undermine the value of this product by sucking some value out of it towards the new cheaper product. Similar to how this product could pull some value from Collector's Edition or revised duels. That's it for today, just a quick update. I wanted to answer some of the questions that I received from my previous video. Have a nice day. Catch you next time.